Welcome to our deep dive into e-payments in Africa.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, we're looking at this blueprint from Smart Africa.
Right.
All about boosting digital trade across the whole continent.
Across the continent, yeah.
Some really interesting sources in the mix, too.
Oh,
Like, we've got reports from the World Bank and GSMA, even case studies like Rwanda's public transport card system.
Cool.
Yeah, so much to dig into.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how Africa is already a global leader in mobile money.
Right.
But, there are definitely still some hurdles,
Oh, for sure.
like those inconsistent regulations across different countries and that persistent gender gap in financial access.
Yeah, makes it tough for a lot of people.
Exactly, and that's what this blueprint is trying to tackle head on.
Okay, so before we get into the blueprint itself,
Sure.
let's talk about this whole mobile money phenomenon.
Yeah.
One of your sources mentioned over 100 million active mobile money accounts in Africa,
It's incredible.
which is more than any other region. Why do you think Africa is leading the charge here?
What's a fascinating example of necessity being the mother of invention.
Right.
In many parts of Africa, traditional banking infrastructure just wasn't as developed.
Yeah.
So that created a perfect space for mobile money to come in and flourish. Like take M-Pesa in Kenya, for example.
Yeah.
It launched back in 2007,
Wow, that long ago.
and it quickly became a game changer.
Yeah.
It showed how even a really basic mobile phone could be a powerful tool for financial inclusion.
You've got a point there.
Yeah.
I remember reading that M-Pesa's success wasn't just about the technology. It was also about building that trust with people.
Exactly.
Like, they partnered with local shops, right? And made it easy to deposit and withdraw cash.
Yeah.
And that helped it take off.
Absolutely. They tapped into those existing social networks and habits.
Yeah.
Made it feel familiar,
Yeah.
accessible.
Right.
And now M-Pesa offers way more than just basic payments.
Right.
They're doing things like loans and insurance,
Oh, wow.
which is really expanding financial access for people who were previously excluded.
So we see how mobile money has taken off in individual countries.
Right.
But what about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
One of your sources mentioned the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Right, the FSC.
Well, FCFTA.
Yeah.
How does that fit into all of this?
Well, the FCFTA is all about boosting trade between African nations,
Okay.
creating a single market.
Right.
But one of the major roadblocks is the lack of a unified e-payment system.
For the whole continent.
Yeah, across borders.
Makes sense.
It's like having all these amazing goods and services ready to flow,
Right.
but the financial pipelines just aren't there yet.
So that's where the Smart Africa blueprint comes in.
Exactly.
It's about building those financial pipelines
Yeah.
to make that FCFTA dream a reality,
Precisely, the blueprint recognizes that the current fragmented system,
with each country having its own rules,
it's a mess.
is holding everything back.
Yeah, it sets out this roadmap to create a more integrated and efficient cross-border e-payment system.
And how do they plan to actually do that?
Well, they're focusing on three main pillars:
Okay.
legal and regulatory harmonization,
Uh-huh.
building a really robust infrastructure,
Right.
and fostering a thriving business ecosystem.
Okay, so let's break those down one by one.
Sounds good.
Starting with the legal side.
Yeah.
What kind of changes are they proposing?
So right now, navigating the regulations in Africa can be a nightmare for fintech companies.
Really?
They might have to deal with 54 different sets of rules and regulations
54.
across the continent,
Wow.
which adds a ton of complexity and cost.
Wow. I see.
So the blueprint suggests moving towards a more harmonized system,
Okay.
potentially through something called passporting.
Passporting.
Yeah. So it would mean that a fintech company licensed in one African country
Right.
could operate across borders
Okay.
without needing separate authorizations in each nation.
So it's kind of like a financial visa, allowing businesses to scale up more easily, reach a wider market.
Precisely.
That sounds like it could really boost innovation.
It has the potential.
But even with a streamlined regulatory framework,
Right.
you still need the infrastructure to support it.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Reliable internet and electricity access are crucial for e-payments to thrive.
Yeah.
And the blueprint acknowledges that this can be a challenge,
For sure.
especially in remote and landlocked areas.
Right.
So they highlight the potential of solutions like community solar farms and microgeneration to bridge the gap.
Because you can't process a mobile money transaction
Right.
if your phone's dead.
Exactly.
And on the business side, what does the blueprint say about that?
Well, they emphasize the need for a healthy mix of competition and collaboration.
Okay.
They talk about creating a thriving business ecosystem. where different players can innovate, test new ideas, and work together to create a system that benefits everyone.
So they're not just about creating a level playing field,
Right.
but also encouraging collaboration and innovation within the sector.
Absolutely. One example they mention is this idea of fintech sandboxes.
Fintech sandbox.
Yeah, they're controlled environments where companies can experiment with new products and services.
Interesting.
Without having to navigate all the usual regulatory hurdles.
So it allows for safe and responsible innovation.
Exactly.
And they also talk about interoperability, right? This idea of different payment platforms being able to talk to each other.
Interoperability is crucial.
Yeah.
Think about how frustrating it would be if you could only send messages to people using the same messaging app.
Yeah.
Same logic applies to payments. We need a system where money can flow freely between different platforms,
Right.
regardless of which one you use.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This will make it way easier for people to transact, both within and across borders.
So far, we've talked about mobile money's success,
Right.
the challenges of cross-border trade, and this blueprint's vision for a more integrated system.
Yeah. But there are some specific issues that come up in your sources that I'd like to unpack a little bit.
Sure.
For example, data localization is a really hot topic these days.
It is.
Some countries argue that storing data within their borders is crucial for privacy and security.
Right.
But the blueprint seems to push back on that idea a bit, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a fascinating debate with valid arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have those concerns about data being misused or falling into the wrong hands if it's stored outside the country.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's this argument that data localization can stifle innovation
Okay.
and make services more expensive.
One of your sources, the World Bank report, pointed out that data localization can lead to companies having to build multiple data centers,
Right.
which adds significant costs that ultimately get passed on to consumers.
Exactly. And the blueprint argues that having data backed up in multiple locations,
Okay.
potentially even outside the country.
Can actually enhance security and resilience
Interesting.
in case of like disasters or cyber attacks.
It's like having a backup generator for your data.
Exactly. So
Okay.
it's not a simple issue.
Right.
There are trade-offs to consider.
Yeah.
And the blueprint encourages a more nuanced discussion about finding the right balance.
Between data protection and promoting innovation,
Yeah,
affordability.
absolutely.
Another issue that comes up is the gender gap in financial access.
Right.
How does the blueprint address that?
Well, the blueprint makes it very clear that leaving women behind is not only unjust,
Yeah,
but it also holds back the continent's entire economic potential.
I see.
So they call for targeted interventions
Okay.
to address the specific barriers that women face.
When it comes to accessing financial services, like
Right.
what kind of barriers are we talking about?
Well, there are many. For example,
Huh.
women often have less access to formal identification documents.
Which you need for things like opening a bank account.
Right, exactly.
Or accessing mobile money services.
Yeah. They might also face cultural norms or social expectations that limit their financial independence.
So it's not just about creating the technology. It's
Right.
about understanding the social and cultural context in which it operates.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
And the blueprint highlights the need for financial products and services that are specifically tailored to women's needs.
Okay, so give me an example.
Like, think about a loan product designed for women entrepreneurs
Okay.
who may not have traditional collateral,
Right.
but have a strong track record of running successful businesses.
So it's about recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach won't work.
It won't.
When it comes to financial inclusion, you need to consider the unique needs of different groups.
Exactly.
And speaking of inclusion, one of your sources highlighted the importance of financial literacy.
Yes, crucial.
How does that fit into the blueprint's vision?
They acknowledge that even with the best technology and infrastructure,
People need the knowledge and skills to effectively manage their finances.
yeah, in a digital world.
Exactly. So they call for financial literacy education to be integrated into school curricula and even vocational training programs.
So it's not just about teaching people how to use a mobile money app,
Right.
but about equipping them with broader financial knowledge so they can make informed decisions.
Exactly. They highlight examples like Kenya's Mshwari 52-week challenge,
I've heard of that.
which encourages people to build a savings habit.
Through a mobile platform.
Right. It's about giving people the tools and knowledge they need to participate fully in the digital economy.
So we've talked about the vision for a more integrated e-payment system.
Yeah.
Tackled the data localization debate.
Uh-huh.
Discussed the gender gap. And touched on the importance of financial literacy.
A lot to cover.
But one thing that stands out to me is how the blueprint acknowledges the importance of the informal economy.
Yes, very important.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure, informal cross-border trade is a huge part of the African economy.
Yeah.
But it often operates outside of the formal financial system.
Right, under the radar.
Yeah, which can be inefficient and risky.
Because people rely on cash transactions or those informal money transfer networks.
Yes, and the blueprint recognizes that we can't just ignore this sector.
Right.
We need to find ways to integrate it into the formal system.
And how do they propose doing that?
Well, they suggest that digital solutions like mobile money could be the key.
Okay.
They're already proving to be more efficient and cost-effective than traditional methods.
For smaller transactions especially.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where formality and accessibility meet.
One of your sources, the GSMA report, mentioned the need to design formal systems that cater to the specific needs of people participating in informal trade.
Yeah, they often rely on these trusted networks and flexible arrangements.
Which traditional banks struggle to replicate.
Right. It's not just about bringing people into the existing system. It's about designing a system that actually works for them.
Yeah.
It might require a different approach, one that's more agile.
Okay.
And responsive to the needs of small traders and entrepreneurs.
This all sounds really promising.
It does.
But one of the things that impressed me about the blueprint is that it's not just a wish list.
It's not.
It lays out a concrete roadmap for action.
They identify key players like Afrexim Bank.
Okay, Afrexim Bank.
Yeah, they've been instrumental in developing the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System.
Which is?
Or PAPS.
PAPS?
Yeah, this system is designed to facilitate payments in local currencies.
Okay.
Reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar.
Right.
And making cross-border transactions more efficient.
And the GSMA is involved as well, right?
Yes. The GSMA plays a crucial role in promoting policies that support the growth of mobile money.
Right.
And advocating for a more inclusive financial system.
So it's really a collaborative effort.
Yes.
With governments, central banks, fintech companies, and international organizations all working together.
Yeah, to make this vision a reality.
And the blueprint doesn't just set these goals.
Right.
It lays out specific timelines, resource needs, and even risk mitigation strategies.
They recognize that this is a complex undertaking.
For sure.
And that there will be challenges along the way.
So they're trying to think ahead.
They are. They even acknowledge the risk of central banks being hesitant to embrace change.
Okay.
Or the possibility of unforeseen technological obstacles.
Because those things happen.
They do. It's refreshing to see that kind of honesty and foresight.
Yeah.
So often these grand plans fail because they don't account for the potential pitfalls.
Right.
But it seems like they've really tried to anticipate those challenges.
Yeah.
And build in mechanisms to address them.
And a big part of their strategy is about transparency and communication, right?
Absolutely. They propose a whole communication plan to keep stakeholders informed and engaged throughout the implementation process.
So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. They want to highlight success stories and address concerns as they come up.
Because even the best plan is useless if nobody knows about it.
Exactly. You need to get people excited about this vision and demonstrate the potential benefits.
It's about building that momentum, creating a sense of shared ownership.
Right. They also emphasize the importance of monitoring and evaluation.
Okay.
Making sure that the initiatives are actually delivering the intended results.
So they're not just going to set it and forget it.
No, they're going to track progress.
They've even included a section on measuring the impact of these efforts on things like financial inclusion transaction costs and even the growth of women-owned businesses.
It's about making sure these lofty goals actually translate into tangible improvements in people's lives.
It's exciting to see this kind of forward-thinking initiative taking shape.
It is.
It feels like we're on the verge of a financial revolution in Africa.
It does feel that way.
With the potential to transform economies and societies in really profound ways.
And what's really exciting is that Africa isn't just catching up.
Right.
It's taking the lead in shaping the future of digital finance.
Yeah.
This blueprint is a testament to the continent's innovation and determination to create a more inclusive and prosperous future.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've looked at the mobile money landscape, explored the challenges of cross-border trade, and delved into the key elements of this ambitious blueprint.
It is ambitious.
But I'm eager to hear your thoughts on all of this.
Sure.
What stands out to you the most?
You know what fascinates me?
What's that?
Is how the blueprint emphasizes not just building a better payment system,
right,
but using it as a tool for broader societal transformation. They're not just talking about efficiency and convenience.
Yeah.
They're talking about empowering women, supporting small businesses, and contributing to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
So it's about leveraging digital finance for social good.
Exactly.
That's a great point. And it's clear they've put a lot of thought into how these initiatives can contribute to things like reducing poverty, promoting gender equality, and fostering sustainable cities.
It's about people.
Exactly.
Not just technology.
Well said. I think we've laid a really solid foundation for the rest of our deep dive.
I think so, too.
But before we move on to the next part,
okay,
I'd love to hear what's caught your attention so far.
Sure.
What are your initial impressions of this blueprint and the challenges and opportunities it presents?
Well, one thing that really struck me is how the blueprint tackles this misconception that data localization equals better security.
Yeah, interesting.
They brought up some interesting counterpoints.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like how storing data in multiple locations, even outside the country, can actually increase resilience against things like cyber attacks or natural disasters.
It's like having a diversified portfolio.
Exactly.
But for your data.
Yeah, spreading the risk can make the whole system stronger.
And they also pointed out the economic downsides of data localization.
Right. So forcing companies to build data centers in every country they operate in adds huge costs, which ultimately get passed on to the users.
Right, the consumers.
Yeah, the blueprint argues that this can stifle innovation and make services less accessible.
Especially for those who need them most.
Exactly.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
Between protecting data and enabling a thriving digital economy.
Yeah.
The blueprint seems to be pushing for a more nuanced approach.
It is.
Considering those potential downsides of strict data localization policies.
Exactly. It's not about throwing caution to the wind.
Right.
But about finding a solution that fosters both security and innovation.
And speaking of finding solutions, the blueprint goes beyond just identifying problems. It actually proposes a pilot project to test these ideas in the real world.
A real-world test.
Oh, right. I read about that. They're planning to start with a cross-border pilot involving Ghana, Kenya, and Rwanda.
That's right.
With the potential to expand later.
Yeah, that's the hope.
What's the main goal of this pilot?
The big ambition is to create a platform that enables interoperable mobile payments.
Across those three countries?
Exactly. Allowing people to easily buy and sell goods and services.
Okay.
Even across borders.
Using their mobile phones?
Yes.
So someone in Ghana could seamlessly pay a vendor in Kenya using mobile money without having to worry about currency exchange or complicated transfer fees.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
It has the potential.
And they're aiming to do it using local currencies, right?
Yes, facilitated by those regional payment systems and the African Association of Central Banks.
So it's a step towards building a more integrated and independent African financial system.
It is.
It's a really ambitious goal.
It is.
And I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Me too.
But it's smart to start with a pilot project rather than trying to roll out a massive system all at once.
You got to start somewhere.
What kind of challenges do you think they might encounter along the way?
One of the big ones they highlight is the potential for low industry adoption.
Okay, so even with a well-designed platform, getting existing players,
especially those large institutions,
to embrace change can be tough.
They might see this new system as a threat to their existing business models.
It's like trying to convince everyone to switch to a new type of electrical outlet.
I like that.
Even if it's demonstrably better, there's inertia in the system.
That's a great analogy.
And the blueprint acknowledges this risk
They do.
They propose strategies like offering incentives for early adoption and working closely with the private sector to address their concerns.
Yeah, it's about building trust. And demonstrating the mutual benefits of collaboration.
And aside from industry buy-in, what other challenges do they anticipate?
Another concern they raise is institutional capacity.
Okay, so do the organizations involved?
Like government agencies, central banks, fintech companies.
Have the resources and expertise.
Exactly, to effectively implement these changes.
Because it's one thing to have a great plan on paper,
It is.
But it's another to actually execute it.
Absolutely.
It sounds like capacity building will be crucial for success.
It will. And the blueprint proposes investing in training programs.
Okay.
And providing support to equip organizations with the skills they need.
To manage this really complex project.
Exactly. So they're not just throwing money at the problem.
Right.
They're investing in the people who will be driving the change.
That makes sense. They also recognize the ever-present risk of technology complexity, right?
Yes. The pace of innovation in this field is incredible.
It is.
And there's always the possibility of the chosen technology becoming obsolete.
Right.
Or encountering unforeseen challenges.
It's like building a bridge.
Yeah.
While the river keeps changing course.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the blueprint emphasizes the need to stay flexible, adapt to changing circumstances, and foster a culture of continuous learning and improvement.
So it's not just about having a plan A.
Right.
But also having plans B, C, and D ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also highlight the risk of overlapping initiatives.
With so many different organizations working in the digital finance space.
Yeah, there's a chance of duplicated efforts.
Right.
Or projects that aren't aligned.
It's the classic problem of too many cooks in the kitchen.
It is. How do you suggest avoiding that?
Well, they stress the importance of clear communication, regular updates, and mapping out those existing projects to identify potential areas of overlap.
It's about fostering a collaborative spirit, breaking down silos.
Right.
And making sure everyone is rowing in the same direction.
It's like having a conductor to orchestrate all the different instruments in an orchestra.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need someone to ensure all the parts are working together harmoniously to create a beautiful symphony.
So they've identified the potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
And outlined strategies to mitigate them.
They've done their homework.
But how will they actually measure the success of this pilot project?
Right, good question.
What are their key indicators?
They're taking a holistic approach.
Okay.
Looking at both technical and business metrics.
Makes sense.
On the technical side, they'll be assessing things like platform's availability and security, as well as how smoothly it integrates with existing payment systems.
So it needs to be reliable, secure, and easy to use.
Exactly.
Makes sense. And what about the business side?
They'll be tracking things like the total number of completed e-commerce sales, the average transaction value, and even user experience metrics like conversion rates and cart abandonment rates.
So they're not just looking at whether people are using the platform, but also how they're using it and whether it's meeting their needs.
Exactly. And they're also planning to gather feedback directly from users and merchants.
Oh, that's smart. Get it straight from the source.
Absolutely. They want to hear firsthand about the challenges, the successes, and the overall experience of using the platform.
So it's about continuous learning and improvement.
Yes, adapting based on real-world feedback.
It sounds like they're really committed to making this pilot a success.
They seem to be.
And if it works, the potential impact could be huge.
It could be transformative. Imagine a future where small businesses across Africa can easily trade with each other.
Yeah.
Where consumers can seamlessly make cross-border payments.
Right.
And where financial inclusion is expanded to those who have been excluded.
It's a vision of a more connected, inclusive, and prosperous Africa.
Absolutely.
And this pilot project is a crucial step towards making that vision a reality.
A step in the right direction.
But as we've discussed, there will be challenges along the way.
There always are.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle they'll need to overcome?
I think the biggest challenge will be overcoming skepticism. And building trust. You know, there have been a lot of grand promises made about transforming Africa through technology.
Right.
And not all of them have lived up to the hype.
There's a certain amount of fatigue when it comes to big pronouncements.
Right. People want to see action, not just words.
So I think the key to success for this blueprint and for this pilot project will be demonstrating tangible results. And building trust among all stakeholders.
You have to show them this isn't just another empty promise, but a genuine effort to create a system that benefits everyone.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And it sounds like they're putting in the work to make that happen. They've got a solid plan. They've identified the potential pitfalls. And they're committed to measuring their impact.
It's also about embracing collaboration, right?
Absolutely. They recognize that they can't achieve this alone. It requires a collective effort from governments, businesses, and individuals across the continent.
It's a reminder that even the most ambitious goals can be achieved when people work together towards a common purpose.
That spirit of collaboration is what makes me optimistic about the future of e-payments in Africa.
Me too! And I'm excited to see how this pilot project unfolds.
Me too.
It has the potential to be a game changer.
It does.
Not just for the countries involved, but for the entire continent.
It's a story worth following closely.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
okay,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've discussed so far.
Sure.
What aspects of the pilot project stand out to you the most? And what do you think will be the biggest factors in determining its success or failure?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about this pilot project is that it's not just about the technology itself.
Okay.
It's about changing mindsets.
Changing mindsets?
Yeah, shifting the perception of what's possible.
Right.
And showing that Africa can be a leader in the digital economy.
One of your sources mentioned the need to move away from this donor-recipient mentality that has sometimes characterized development efforts in Africa.
It's an outdated model.
Yeah, it's about fostering a sense of ownership and agency, recognizing that African countries are driving their own innovation and progress.
Absolutely, and I think this pilot project embodies that spirit.
Okay.
It's not about outsiders coming in and telling African countries what to do.
Yeah.
It's about African institutions and entrepreneurs taking the lead and shaping their own future.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that solutions developed in Africa can be relevant and applicable to other parts of the world.
Absolutely. It's about sharing knowledge and best practices.
Not just receiving them.
Exactly. Too often, the narrative has been about Africa catching up to the rest of the world.
Right.
But in the realm of mobile money and digital finance, Africa is actually ahead of the curve. There are valuable lessons to be learned here that can benefit other regions.
It's a reminder that innovation can happen anywhere.
It can.
And that we can all learn from each other's experiences.
Absolutely. And I think this blueprint and this pilot project have the potential to inspire similar initiatives in other parts of the developing world.
That would be great.
It's about showing what's possible. It's about showing what's possible when you combine innovative technology with a focus on social impact.
Absolutely. And I think this blueprint and this pilot project have the potential to inspire similar initiatives in other parts of the developing world.
It's a great model.
Yeah, it's about showing what's possible.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts.
Okay.
What's the biggest takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the key takeaway is that the future of e-payments in Africa is incredibly bright.
I agree.
There are challenges, of course.
Oh, for sure.
But there's also a tremendous amount of momentum and a growing recognition of the potential benefits.
Right.
This blueprint provides a roadmap for harnessing that potential and creating a more inclusive, integrated, and prosperous digital economy.
It's a vision worth striving for, and it's clear that you're not just an expert on this topic, but you're also genuinely passionate about it.
I am. I truly believe that digital finance has the power to transform lives and unlock opportunities across the continent.
Well, your enthusiasm is contagious. I have to admit, I'm feeling pretty inspired after this deep dive.
That's great to hear.
And I hope our listener is feeling the same way.
I hope so, too. And I hope it sparks some further exploration and conversation.
Yes, we want to hear from you.
Definitely.
What surprised you the most?